Hello, everyone. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. It would really help the channel out quite a bit. Thank you very much.
Good evening. This is Henry Fonda. One of these days, you, sitting there beside the radio, and I, talking here into this microphone, must make a decision. It must be the right decision. If we fail, we may never have a chance to make another, for civilization as we know it may disappear from the face of the earth. What you are about to hear is not designed to scare you, but it might, because it's true.
The Fifth Horseman. 4 horsemen rode across the land, and their names were War, Pestilence, Famine, Death, and to these now is added a 5th horseman, the threat of the atom.
The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations present The Fifth Horseman, written and produced by Arnold Marquis. Here is the plain truth about the awesome significance of atomic energy and the hour of decision which faces mankind. Starring Henry Fonda, this is the first in the series titled Rehearsal.
Some people know firsthand what happens when an atomic bomb explodes, but not many. No one was actually close enough to see with his own eyes what happened when that bomb was exploded over the ships here at Bikini a couple days ago. Pictures were taken by drone planes and from a distance of miles from towers on shore and ships. You've seen some of these pictures. You've heard the radio reports, read the newspapers. But the thing is, you can't be a close eyewitness to the explosion of an atomic bomb and live. We were on a ship 18 miles away from Bikini when the bomb went off. We've seen through our dark glasses the great blinding light and the majestic cloud rising to the sky. Right now they're tallying the damage done, assessing the damage to the ships, to the animals. Naturally, there are a lot of opinions.
Most of the big battle wagons are still afloat, aren't they? And many of the animals are still alive.
This was one of the reporters on our ship.
Yes, they're still afloat. But in another 10 days, many of the animals may be dead.
This is a scientist.
From the effects of radiation?
Yes.
But if these ships had a thick enough shield on the decks, the animals below would probably be safe.
Uh-huh. It would have to be a pretty heavy shield, several feet of concrete.
And so far as the damage to the superstructure is concerned, all that means is we've got to build the ships with no superstructure.
Uh-huh. But what difference does it make if a battleship is not sunk by an atomic bomb? If the families of the crew back in the United States are killed by one?
Well...
And what difference does it make if a battleship is not sunk by an atomic bomb if our cities can be wiped out by them?
He's right. Atomic bombs are weapons to be used against cities and civilians, not against armies and navies. Make your ships unsinkable. But that will not save your cities and your people.
You sound as scared as Mr. Scientist here.
I am.
He was at Hiroshima.
The people of Hiroshima, those that are left, know what an atomic bomb does. And as for me, a bunch of us prisoners had been brought to Hiroshima the night before. We were quartered out to the edge of the city. I don't know if they plan to question us there or take us on up to Tokyo. We were up early.
There goes that little old squeaky siren again.
That's the second time.
Yeah, I thought it never would stop about an hour ago. Whee!
Yeah.
Woke me up right out of a sound sleep. Spoiled my dream. It did. And what was it for? I didn't hear no planes.
Shut up, Mississippi.
Maybe this is the last call. Maybe they're coming now.
It stopped.
Must be the all clear.
I don't know why our guys would bother coming over here.
There's a strong garrison here.
How big? Well, we could overpower them and get away.
Sure, there's 5 of us.
Man, look at that sun out there. Beautiful day.
Yeah.
Sun shines here just like it does in Mississippi.
No.
I wouldn't be mad at nobody today if they'd let me go home. I mean it.
We ate our breakfast. Rice, fermented beans, soup, and pickles. We waited for the guards to come and get us. From the barred windows, we could see the people going to work. Kids playing. The streets were busy. Office workers, clerks, bankers going to their desks. Streetcars, automobiles, bicycles. That's the way it was until 8:14 that morning. Then the room we were in suddenly flooded by the brightest light that man has ever seen on this earth.
What's that? That light? I can't see. That heat, it's like a furnace.
He was standing in an open window. He had looked into the face of the bomb, perhaps from 2 or 3 miles away.
I'm blind. I can't see. I'm blind!
The 2 glass windows were blown in against us, frame and all. The door was blown in. The shattered glass flew through the room with a velocity of bullets. What didn't hit us embedded itself in the walls. I picked myself up bleeding.
A bomb hit us. A bomb hit us.
It must have landed right outside.
It just missed us.
Then a terrific wind roared through the room. In a few seconds, it stopped. 2 of the fellows couldn't get up. They just lay there, bleeding.
Hey, guard! Guard, help!
No one came.
Guard! Hey, guard, help! Stay away from that door, Mississippi. They'll pick you off if you try to get out. With these guys here. Shut up!
We did what we could for the fellows on the floor. They were bleeding pretty badly.
Hey, look at this. What's this on my arm?
Where?
Right here. Right here across my forearm.
It's a blister. It's as big as a hen's egg.
That's what it was, a blister, the kind that rises from a flash burn.
I can't see. And my face burns. My chest, too.
The face of that boy was all flash burned. No, not all. We found out later. He was facing a barred window, and its shadow was tattooed on his face and on his breast. The skin was scorched, except where the shadows of the bars fell.
Hey, look at the wallpaper.
The wallpaper started burning. We tore it off and stamped the fire out.
Get that paper down! Get it down!
I tried to figure what had happened. It must have been a strange bomb to burn us like that and blow in the door and windows. It must have landed very close. But there was such a long time between the flash and the blast, as if the explosion had occurred far away. I went cautiously to the open doorway.
There ain't no place a bomb landed out there that I can see.
I could see no bomb crater.
Hey, look at those buildings down there. They're all blown down.
The buildings around us looked as if they'd been demolished by a tornado.
One of them's on fire. Look.
And look at the woods over there across the valley. They're on fire, too.
Flames were sweeping through the woods like a forest fire. Then I saw the city.
Hey, the whole city down below's on fire.
A white sheet of fire was rising from the city. Not one fire, but 1,000 fires. And a great plume of smoke and dust rising thousands of feet into the sky above them.
What's hit us? What's hit us?
Five major enemy industrial targets and a strong enemy military installation were wiped out.
This is the scientist at Bikini.
Hundreds of thousands of American lives were spared, and additional Japanese cities were saved from destruction by that bomb at Hiroshima.
It stunned me.
The first damage was done by the shock wave.
I remember that. And then came that wind.
That was the wind blowing out from the bomb.
It was like a hurricane.
It was a super hurricane, about 1,000 miles an hour for a few seconds.
Yeah. When it was over, we were all on the floor.
It's no wonder. It was that wind that snapped off the trees and knocked over all but the strongest buildings and carried away the lighter buildings and streetcars and automobiles like cigarette papers in a gale.
fixed up the two fellows bleeding the most. Then Mississippi and I started out for help. We headed down the valley, down toward the city. The city was blazing. The flames were spreading out from the center, roaring with fury.
It's that wind. That's what's doing it.
The heat rising from the center of the fire was creating whirlwinds that whipped up the fire like a blast furnace.
Look out! Look out, that tree!
The whirlwind tore out trees by the roots and carried them whirling and blazing into the air. Great trees weighing tons, turning end over end, twisting crazily through the flaming debris that filled the air.
Get down! Get down!
We lay down and hung on.
Look at that. Every place one of them burning trees or burning planks comes down, it starts a new fire.
We could see the new fires springing up. We just lay there and looked. No pictures were taken of that fire. No close-up pictures of that fire appeared in any newspaper. The firefighting equipment of Hiroshima was knocked out along with everything else when the bomb fell. All preparations for emergency work were knocked out. That's what happens when an atomic bomb explodes over a city.
What could it have been? What kind of bomb could have done this?
I don't know, Mississippi. We started down toward the city again.
This heat.
The smell.
I can't breathe.
You want to stop?
No. We gotta find a hospital or a dressing station or something, if we can.
Pretty soon we found out what the smell was. Burned corpses. The heat was stifling. We made our way down to the river. People were lying along the river. Some of them partway into the water, just lying there. Some of them were still living. Some of the dead were floating in the river. Some of the living had waded out into the water. All were burned. Some were naked. Some still had charred rags on.
This heat. Let's get down in that water before I keel over. Come on.
Yeah. We waded out into the water, up to our necks. The heat and the smell were unbearable. We ducked our heads trying to find some relief. Lifeless bodies floated against us. More victims were dragging themselves down to the shore, some of them crawling. We made our way back to the road. Metal light poles were bent double, like licorice sticks. And up from the city came the burned and the bleeding. We headed down toward the hospital. We came to a steel frame building.
Look at that. That building's still standing.
We walked over to it.
Holy! Look at the corpses in there. Not one living thing. Every one of them's...
That's what the blast wind does to buildings strong enough to resist collapse.
This is the scientist in bikini.
It's like an air hose being turned into a cup filled with sawdust. Those not killed by being blown against the machinery or the walls or by the collapsing floors are killed by the flying debris, steel splinters and bits of machinery that can decapitate a man or cut him in half like that.
The burned and wounded who could still walk dragged along or carried those that could not walk.
Help us, please. Help us.
Look at that one. The burns on him.
Help us. Help.
He dropped. Look, he fell down. Come on.
We went over to him.
How could a guy... Oh.
He's dead, Mississippi.
Yeah.
There were dead everywhere. Some of them had been charred black. Some were in sitting positions. Some, badly burned, had crawled under streetcars and automobiles, thinking to save themselves from the bombs to come. And there they died.
How can we ever find a hospital? There can't be no hospital down there. Everything's gone.
As I stood there, my mind reeled. In the flash of an instant, a city had been destroyed. Everything suddenly had come to an end. The entire structure of society suddenly had been destroyed. All personnel, all records, all machinery, everything by which men work and live together. Industry had ended. Suddenly there were no telephones, no telegraphs, no trains, no streetcars, no automobiles. The stubs of buildings, twisted wreckage, rubble, smoldering fires, and ashes.
When the bomb explodes, it's as though the sun were suddenly placed there.
The heat was terrific.
It was about the same as having a piece of the sun, a ball of fire, millions of degrees hot, placed suddenly only 600 yards away.
That's what must have charred all the people who were not in the buildings.
Yes. And those who were protected and were not burned were shot through by radiations. And they died anyway.
We found what was left of the hospital. An atomic bomb does the same thing to a hospital as it does to an arsenal. It does the same thing to churches and schools as to navy yards. The things that might alleviate the suffering are wiped out the same time the suffering is caused. That's the way it was with the hospital.
These people have come here for the same reason we did.
Yeah.
Look at them. Laying all over the ground, waiting for help.
Bandages, ointment. You bring ointment.
An old Japanese with the side of his face burned and one of his eyes matted closed with blood came up to us.
We're looking for bandages ourselves.
Ointment. Must have ointment. Please, you bring ointment.
We haven't any.
My wife burned bad. Burned bad.
Half these people here are still living with those burns.
A makeshift dressing station had been set up near where the hospital had stood. More people were drifting in. There was nobody there but a German priest.
Nothing can be done for them. All our dressings and all our trucks are gone.
None left at all?
None.
Oh.
We had only enough to dress the big wounds of the first ones.
Yeah.
Father, you come see my wife. My wife, please.
Where is she?
Quick, you come this way.
Yes.
This way, quick. My wife, she needs you.
The priest went with him over to where his wife was lying on the ground. He knelt down over her. We went over where they were.
Oh, would that none should perish who believed and trusted in thee. According to the multitude of thy tender mercies, look favorably upon thy servant, whom the true faith and hope of Christ do commend unto thee. Visit him in thy saving power, and through the passion and
she's lucky she's going.
What do you mean, lucky?
I mean...
Yeah, I know.
That might have been one of us.
It still might.
Yeah.
I am the resurrection and the life. He who believeth in me, although he be dead, shall live. And every one who liveth and believeth in me shall not die forever.
We stood there for a couple minutes looking at her, and at all the others lying there, scattered around the ground. Old women, young women with their kids huddled around them. Men, workers in rags, some in bare feet, businessmen, men in fine clothes, all come to the hospital for help, and there was no help. They just lay there, waiting to die. And they died.
I can't stand the smell. Ugh.
It stank.
Smells like an incinerator.
We looked down over the ashes and the rubble of the city.
95% of Hiroshima was destroyed with the one blow.
There were dead everywhere, Mr. Scientist.
Yes, about 100,000 of them in all, not counting the wounded and the missing.
The missing.
No one will ever know how many are missing. They simply disappeared.
Many more died in the days following.
Yes, they died on the roadside, in neighboring towns and villages. Some got to faraway cities, died there in hospitals or in streets.
We better get back up to our guys.
You go back, Mississippi. I still may be able to find some help.
Y'all can't find nothing down here.
You go back. Tell them what you saw.
Yeah.
A sort of terror whelmed up in me as Mississippi walked away. I wasn't scared, not in the ordinary sense. But it was the unearthliness, the ghastliness. Several Japanese came into the cleared area of the dressing station with litters. They lifted the dead onto the litters and carried them away.
They are taking the bodies away to burn them.
The priest crossed himself as they moved the bodies.
Will you help?
I? Yeah, I'll help.
Thank you. Give me a hand with this one.
Yeah. It was the old woman who had just died. It was like lifting a child.
Hachiro.
The priest spoke to the old Japanese, the husband of the woman.
Yes.
Do you want to go along?
Yes. I want to gather the firewood.
The priest turned to me.
All these people want to cremate their own dead.
We lifted another body, a young woman, onto the litter. Her brother, who brought the litter, helped us. He and the old Japanese took the front end of the litter. I carried the other end. We walked out over the rubble and the ruins. Where we were going, I didn't know. The two Japanese at the front end of the litter led the way. I could feel the heat of the burnt-out ruins through my shoes. We kept walking. We stepped over the dead. We walked around the dead horses. We walked around the twisted wreckage of the steel and concrete buildings. We kept walking. We put down the litter many times before we arrived at the entrance of the valley above the city. At twilight, we were there. It was like the end of the world, darkness descending and the city below still smoldering and smoking. We picked up the litter and headed up into the valley. I'll never forget that night. The two bodies we brought up went on a pyre with many other bodies. We gathered wood for hours, and when the pyre was lit, I just sat down and looked at it. At dawn, the fires had burned down to ashes. The old Japanese was gone. Lying on the ground near me was the young Japanese.
He is very sick.
A Korean doctor knelt over him.
He was not burned. He was not hurt by foreign debris.
Where was he at the time of the explosion?
He said he was in the basement of that building that collapsed. And he crawled out before the building caught fire.
In the next few days, he grew worse. I stayed there in the valley and helped with the cremations. Then one day I saw something I've never seen in my life.
Look, please. The blood is oozing out through the skin.
How can it do that? Right through the skin.
I don't know. Something has happened to his blood.
I took care of him as well as I could while the Korean doctor attended to many others that were suffering the same thing. There was no way to stop the bleeding. Suddenly, his respiration and pulse stopped.
He died from the effects of the gamma rays from the bomb.
Apparently he was not hurt when I first saw him.
That's the nature of such injury. The gamma rays, which travel at the rate of 200,000 miles a second, went through him at the instant of the explosion.
Right through him?
Yes, the damage is instantaneous. The radiations destroy the white corpuscles in the blood.
The corpuscles that fight infection.
Yes. The victim has nothing with which to fight infection, so he dies. That's what happened to that young scientist, Dr. Louis Slotin, at the Los Alamos Laboratory just a few weeks ago.
I don't know how many died the same way at Hiroshima.
No one will ever know. And, Mr. Reporter, that's what might happen to the crew of your battle wagon if it's close enough to the explosion, whether or not it's sunk by the blast of the atomic bomb.
The scientist turned to the reporter at Bikini.
You mean those rays can penetrate the armor of a battleship?
Like X-rays go through your skin.
Armor 3 to 6 inches thick?
Oh, armor of that thickness would cut down the rays. But they might still kill every living thing on the ship if it was close enough to the blast.
Immediately?
No, but in a matter of days. And then your ship would be a floating morgue. A ghost ship with not one living person aboard. Of what value is such a battleship, even if it remains afloat? And when atomic bombs are exploded underwater, then there's a great question whether any ship on Earth can stay afloat even several miles away.
What happened at Hiroshima was a rehearsal. The bomb dropped on Nagasaki a few days later was more efficient, more powerful. They can be made still more powerful. As I stood there in the valley above Hiroshima that night with the funeral pyres blazing into the blackness behind me and the smoldering city below, I shuddered at the thought of this happening to an American city. Indianapolis, Omaha, Trenton, Seattle, Birmingham, devastated by a single bomb. But never again will only one atomic bomb drop on a city. If atomic war ever comes, not one but many will be dropped all at once, or smuggled in and exploded all at the same time. And great cities like New York and Chicago and Los Angeles will disappear from the face of the earth.
Henry Fonda will return to the microphone in just a moment. You have been listening to the first program in NBC's new series, The Fifth Horseman. The simple truth about the awesome significance of atomic energy in the hour of decision which faces mankind. Now here is Mr. Fonda.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, there was no exaggeration in what you heard tonight. All the facts are authentic. In the weeks to come in this series, NBC will show what atomic energy means to all of us and the grave problems that we face. Next week's program is titled Dawn, a story of the new age into which we are moving. I hope you will be listening. Good night.
The Fifth Horseman is written and produced by Arnold Marquis. The original music was composed and conducted by Thomas Peluso. This program came to you from Hollywood. This is NBC, the national broadcasting company.